Borderlands 3 has received a lot of hotfixes in its lifetime, with many different changes ranging from major fixes for game mechanics to huge buffs to underperforming weapons that made those weapons some of the best around. And that's what we're talking about today. Hey Volt Hunters, I'm Constant Canadian, and these are 10 of the biggest weapon buffs in Borderlands 3. If you enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel. And if you're looking for more Borderlands content, consider joining me live on YouTube. I live stream every Saturday to Tuesday from 6 PM EST until whenever I feel like it. I'll see you there. Starting off the list in no particular order, we have the Rowan Call. This assault rifle manufactured by Jacobs is available in fire, shock, and radiation. The Rowan Call shoots bullets that, upon scoring a critical hit, return 2 bullets to the magazine and ricochet 2 orbs towards nearby enemies. While the initial projectile does not deal splash damage, the ricocheted orbs do in fact deal splash damage. The Rowan Call was a good weapon around the launch of the game and was really useful up until the launch of Mayhem 2.0. With the enemies getting a 125 times increase to their health at the time, the Rowan Call lost quite a bit of its power. It was still fine, but there were tons of better options. That was until June 10th of 2021, where this gun was given a huge weapon damage buff. Not 100%, not 200%, but 300%. With a 300% buff to its damage, the Rowan Call was once again in the top 10 assault rifles, and still to this day is an amazing choice on every Volt Hunter. If you want this weapon for yourself, it drops from Red Rain in the Slaughter 3000 map, but that whole map is a glitch, so you're probably better off just farming world drops for it. Next up is the Katoa. This Maliwan sniper is unfortunately locked to the fire element, however that really doesn't stop it from being great. The Katoa requires a 1-second charge up time before full auto firing fire beams. Upon killing an enemy with this weapon, a volcano spawns from the ground and shoots fireballs in a radius around it, dealing fire splash damage and leaving fire puddles at the point of impact. The Katoa was a complete joke of a weapon at first, with bare minimum damage. That was until March 5th, 2020. Where this thing got a massive 300% weapon damage buff. This buff brought this weapon up to an insane level damage-wise. It also introduced a new problem, however, where the volcanoes that spawn from kills with this thing also pretty much now one-shot you no matter what. But still, this buff made the Katoa an absolutely amazing sniper rifle that is more than capable of dealing good damage. If you want one for yourself, it drops from Tumorhead in Electra City, who spawns during or after the quest Proof of Wife. Uniques in Borderlands 3 are really bad, often having less damage than even a non-unique weapon of the same type. And while there are a few exceptions to this rule, there is no bigger exception than the Crit SMG. The Crit is a Maliwan SMG that is locked to the shock element. At launch, this weapon had piss poor damage, 5% lifesteal, and a 12.5% chance to drop to the ground upon reloading, meaning that even if it did do damage, the negatives heavily outweighed the positives. That was until February 11th, 2021, where the Crit got a buff to 8% lifesteal instead of 5% lifesteal, and a massive reduction in a chance to drop to 5% instead of 12.5%. This hotfix also gave the Crit a ginormous weapon damage buff. Not 100%, not 200%, not even 300 or 400%, but 540% weapon damage. This immediately made the Crit one of, if not the best unique non-legendary weapons. To get this weapon, you just need to tip Moxie on Sanctuary until she mails you it, making it not only one of the best, but also one of the easiest to obtain as well. Coming up next is the DNA. This SMG is manufactured by Maliwan, and while according to the item card it's locked to non-elemental, it's actually locked to every element except radiation all of the time. The DNA fires 2 orbs that diverge apart from each other in random directions, connecting with an energy beam that deals damage as it passes through enemies. These orbs and beams randomly choose either fire, shock, corrosive, or cryo to take as their element when firing. This gun first launched with Mayhem 2.0, and despite being released alongside it, it was nowhere near equipped to deal with the tankier enemies at the time, especially considering it randomly chose an element when firing. So sometimes you'd get the right element for your opponent, but other times you would get the worst element for your opponent. However, on January 14th, 2021, the DNA got a huge buff to almost every single stat. Not only did it get a 166.7% weapon damage buff, but it also got a 39% fire rate buff and a 50% reload speed and magazine size buff as well. It also got a buff to its projectile speed, which is technically bad for this weapon as you want the beams to stay in your enemies for as long as possible for maximum damage, but it still made this weapon way better. After this buff, the DNA went from a 0 to about a 7 or 8, but then there was another buff in April 29th, 2021, which gave it another 31.3 weapon damage buff, which made this SMG a clear 8 or 9. At this point, with the increased damage as well as anointments, the DNA is strong enough that the random elements don't really hurt it anymore. And while it isn't the best SMG, it's now very powerful in the right hands. If you want one of these things for yourself, it drops from General Trant on the Desolation's Edge map at Mayhem level 6 or higher. Next on the list, we have the TKs Wave. This shotgun is manufactured by Jacobs and can come in the non-elemental, fire, and shock elements. The TKs Wave shoots 6, 8, 9, 10, or 12 projectiles depending on your parts in a horizontal line. And while I can't really say that this gun was useless per se before its buff, on higher Mayhem levels it became a very weak option, with many better options for shotguns out there. That was at least until May 14th, 2021, where the TKs Wave got an extra 223% weapon damage added onto it. This buff also made the projectiles shot by the TKs Wave go faster through the air, which made it way easier to land these rather inaccurate bullets on your target. Thanks to this increase, the TKs Wave now has the second highest single shot damage of every shotgun in the game. Though to get all the pellets on a regular sized target, you're gonna need to be almost pressed against your target. If you want one for yourself, it drops from the Holy Dump Truck on the Droughts map, who spawns during or after the quest Dump on Dump Truck. Just be sure not to confuse the TKs Wave with the Tidal Wave, which is essentially the exact same weapon, but worse in every way, shape, and form. Speaking of shotguns, we have the Trevonator coming up next. The Trevonator is a Maliwan shotgun that is available in all elements. This shotgun is relatively simple in terms of actual usage. It fires a 3-round burst of 3 or 6 pellets that will explode on impact and deal splash damage of the weapon's element. The origin of this weapon is a rather sad and wholesome one, as it was named after Trevor Eastman, who was a huge Borderlands fan, who during the development of Borderlands 3 fell terminally ill with cancer. Gearbox ended up flying Trevor out and let him try Borderlands 3 early, and also added the Trevonator into the game for him, to forever immortalize his name in Borderlands history. This gun was strong at launch, but much like a bunch of other weapons, fell off pretty hard during the launch of Mayhem 2.0. Luckily, only 7 months later, on November 9th, 2020, Gearbox put out a hotfix that increased the Trevonator's damage by 138%, which isn't the massive buffs other weapons on this list have gotten, but it was more than enough to make the Trevonator a great shotgun again. If you want this shotgun for yourself, it drops from Private Beans on Athenas, who spawns during or after the mission Invasion of Privacy. Moving on now to yet another shotgun, the Lob. The Lob is a legendary shotgun manufactured by Torg that comes in every element. This shotgun shoots slow-moving orbs that pass through enemies, dealing damage continuously while inside of the enemy, and exploding upon impacting a surface, dealing splash damage. This shotgun was a massive joke at the initial launch of the game, only dealing about 20% of the weapon card's damage per tick while inside of an enemy. Luckily, it got a buff about a month in that changed its damage to 60% of the weapon card's damage, and made the projectile slow down faster after firing to allow the same enemy to be hit multiple times. And while this update made it less of a joke, it still wasn't a great choice. That was until February 27th, 2020, where it got yet another buff that not only upped its tick damage to 160% of the weapon card's damage, but also tripled its mag size and made it a 3-shot burst. This is the update that truly started the Lob's rise to power, and although the burst fire was taken away 2 months later, it got a buff to its fire rate at the same time. All these buffs combined make the Lob a very strong weapon for every Vault Hunter. If you want one for yourself, it drops from Grave Ward on the Floating Tomb map. Moving on finally to something that isn't a shotgun, we have the Encamped Herald. The Encamped Herald has quite a history with this franchise as being incredibly powerful, being one of the stronger pistols in Borderlands 2. And naturally, when it came to Borderlands 3 with the Bounty of Blood DLC, it was a huge throwback to the previous power of the Herald. This gun shoots 3 gyrojet projectiles that split into 7 after a set distance. Now, the Herald was good when it first launched, but despite being available in all elements as well as non-elemental, it certainly left a little bit to be desired. Until about a year after its initial release, where Gearbox buffed the Herald's weapon damage by 100%. This relatively small buff was all it really took for the Encamped Herald to become one of the strongest pistols in the game, and an absolute favorite for Mo's mains everywhere. If you want this amazing pistol for yourself, it drops from Caber Dowd in the Blood Sun Canyon map on Gehenna. Well, that certainly was a nice break from talking about shotguns, huh? Anyways, coming up next we have the Butcher. This legendary shotgun is manufactured by Hyperion, comes in all elements as well as non-elemental, and has been in both Borderlands 1 and 2 before coming to 3. The Butcher is a fully automatic shotgun with a very high fire rate, but low pellet count, making it pretty much the closest thing we have to an actual assault shotgun in this game. Additionally, the Butcher also has a chance to add a random amount of ammo to your magazine when firing. The Butcher is another one of those weapons that was massively overperforming at the launch of the game, causing it to actually get a nerf to its fire rate and accuracy, which caused this to go from one of the most popular weapons at the time to just another legendary on the floor. That was until almost 2 years later, where Gearbox finally returned this thing to its former glory. On June 10th, 2021, we got a hotfix that increased the Butcher's damage by 83.3%, and also massively increased the chance to add ammo to your magazine while firing, to the point where firing this thing for a full minute straight without needing to reload on any character is pretty commonplace. If you want one for yourself, it has an increased chance to drop from Titan in the Slaughter map, but can also be given by Crazy Earl in exchange for ludograms. Now, we can't really talk about weapons going from zero to hero without talking about the figurehead of that phenomenon, the Hellwalker. The Hellwalker, as we probably all know at this point, is a legendary shotgun manufactured by Jacobs and locked to the fire elements. This shotgun shoots 10 pellets in a pentagram pattern and also plays a guitar riff sound when firing. It also has fixed parts and will always be a one-shot reload by default, but with a very fast reload speed. When the game first launched, the Hellwalker was just okay. Sure, it could be a decent shotgun, but there were many better options. Weirdly enough, about a month after the game's launch, this shotgun actually got an 8% damage nerf, which felt super insignificant at the time and almost completely pointless. However, about a year into the game's lifecycle, this weapon got an insane 317% weapon damage buff, making it one of the best shotguns in the game. This buff gave the Hellwalker a place in everybody's hearts as an amazing shotgun, and if you want one for yourself, you probably already know where it drops, but it drops from Road Dogg on the Splinterlands map. There are a lot of weapons in this game that have gotten some pretty big buffs, but those are probably 10 of the biggest buffs in Borderlands 3 history. Thank you all so much for watching, have a fantastic day.